Good morning to you, all of you, ladies and gentlemen. And let me say, I really feel very happy to be here in Goa. This is my first visit, and it happens to be a visit that has filled me with a lot of joy. I can even say it's a birthday present because today is my 81st birthday. Normally you sing happy birthday and all that stuff, but I heard much better stuff about me, so that I feel I have to come back to Goa again. And I was telling Nimish Pandya as I was coming, there's something wrong here. And he said, what's wrong? I said, there is no dirt on the streets. I am very uncomfortable. Then he said, this is Goa, sir, this is Goa. So I'm really happy to be here today. I don't know what title was given, but the title of my talk is going to be India at Crossroads. Which way should it turn? I wish to essentially speak about the crisis and the dilemma facing this country. And it appears to be at some kind of a crossroads. And it is important for this country to take a right and correct turn. There are two reasons for this. First is that it is good for us. And secondly, very soon we will be the #1 country in terms of population. And if we set the right example, maybe the world will follow us. As Mama used to say, India should be a moral superpower, not a material superpower or a military superpower. It is useless to do that. And our tradition is to be a moral superpower. We have to be that. I'd like to begin in 1947, which was when the British left this country after breaking it into two countries. And since then, we existed as one country, independent India that is. But through our genius, we have made it into two nations. One is the nation of the rich and the middle class, and other is the nation of the poor and the destitute. Sorry, I was just lowering this because the gain was high. And in this context, I am very happy that Mr. Srinivas Dempo and his charities have understood that they have a leadership role to play. And I do pray that there will be more of him, more like him in this country, especially when we have the third largest number of billionaires. If at least a few of them would follow his example, it would be a good thing. Now, it is true that a lot of effort has been made after independence, and it's also true that we have made a lot of progress. There is no question about it. But poverty remains, and the record of poverty elimination is quite disappointing. At one time, we had the strange spectacle of tiny little Singapore. Leaders would come from there and lecture to people in India. Oh, you don't know how to do things, you don't know how to manage, you don't know what to do and all that. But during the last 2 decades, things have changed dramatically. Today, India is a member of the G20 and is number 8 in the world GDP. Whereas Singapore is merely a tourist destination with the world's best airport, perhaps, nothing more. That said, the honeymoon of economic reforms that was introduced in this country in 1990 seems to be over. It's interesting that not only India, but most countries around the world, including the United States and Singapore, are facing problems. The nature of the problem varies from country to country. Spain has got one kind of problem, Portugal has got another kind of problem, Italy has got another kind of problem, Greece, and so on, India too. But there are certain things that are common to all. Broadly speaking, the three factors that relate to these problems are the basic factors. First, the economy. The second is the prevailing social and cultural tradition. And finally, this is important, the moral and spiritual ambience. Most of you, I'm sure, would be able to appreciate points number 1 and 2, but where point 3 is concerned, you must scratch your head and say, what has morality got to do with dollars and pounds and the euro? Well, in my view, recent events have sent a strong signal that a robust moral base is a must for India and indeed the whole world. I think I have said enough by way of introduction, and let me now get started. Now, I told you that after the economic reforms were introduced by Dr. Menezes Singh as the finance minister in 1990 or so, India soon began to gallop literally and was said to be shining. Shining India was the slogan. But if you look carefully beneath that shine, all was not well. Can I have the next slide, please? This is a familiar sight in the city of Mumbai. You have skyscrapers and the middle of its slums right next to each other to show this is one India and this is the other India. And yesterday, as I was driving through city, Mr. Nimish Pandya would say, now we will make a change from one India to another India. So we were going through the slums and very soon we came to the Santa Cruz airport. It was a different India. So we go through these experiences, but we don't notice it. Next slide, please. This is a picture of a village in Chhattisgarh. I'm very happy the slides are coming out very well. This is the one auditorium where they are coming out very well, and I'm grateful to the organizers for the arrangements made. This is how things look in 21st century in this village. And Chhattisgarh is also one of the states with a very large Maoist or insurgent activity. I will have more to say about it very shortly, but the next slide, please. This is a picture of a shop in a village near where I live, Puttaparthi. I personally took this picture some years ago when I went along with our students for what is called the annual Gram Seva. The point to note is what you see in this shop is what you get in that village. If that shop doesn't have it, you don't get it, not in that village. To those who are used to shopping malls, this may look unbelievable. How do they manage, they would say. But that's how they manage. In fact, many villages have no midwife to deliver babies, which is a horror in 21st century, but that's the way it is. There is a French saying, it says, the more things change, the more they remain the same. And the next slide confirms it. This is a picture taken in the year 1888. 1888 means 19th century. After that we had the 20th century, 100 years, and we are in the 13th year of the 21st century. This picture was taken last year in a village near Puttaparthi. Same stuff, nothing different, except for the fact, A, there is a lady, and B, the people are slightly better dressed. So there is a large part of this country which is not progressed much in 140 years or 130 years. That's not a great compliment. Let us pause and reflect on asymmetric growth and its hazard. This in spite of the fact that one side of India is shining. Swami says, nature, that is Satya Sai Baba, we call him Swami, nature is a great teacher. Let us now look at one example of how nature manages growth. Next slide, please. Take a good look at this slide, which is showing how a little boy grows into an adult. This is at the age of 1, 3, 5, 10, 15, then this is an adult. The interesting point is, at this age, the head is almost 25% of the length of the body. 25%. But here, this length is not 1/4 but 1/9. So nature grows in a particular way. And this sort of called calibrated, balanced growth is shown in a different way in the next slide. Here we have kept the heights, but you can see how the head goes on appearing to shrink and how there is a sort of an expansion of the middle region from here to this. So that is what you call balanced growth. As opposed to balanced growth, we have in the next slide an example of asymmetric growth. This is balanced growth here. This is asymmetric growth. The head has grown big, but the torso is shrunk. It's not grown as much as it should. Now, such asymmetric development has very serious implications, but they are seldom appreciated by those controlling the growth engine. What I'm trying to say is, if this happens in a human body, it's a very dangerous thing. Sometimes such things happen, abnormal deformities occur due to gene mutations and all that. We do know of that. But if such abnormal growth happens in a society due to wrong policies, then it has serious implications. And this is true not only of India, but the whole world. Now, the root cause everywhere for abnormal growth is the same, and I will come back to that a little later. Meanwhile, let us look at the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. This slide shows the nature and the complexity of India. You have a lot of contrast. If you are rich, you are poor. If you are educated, you are illiterate. If you are urban, you are rural. If you are employed, unemployed, urban worker, farmer. And we have a lot of diversity, religious diversity, ethnic diversity, cultural diversity, and language diversity. The official number of languages is around 20 or so, but the number of dialects and so on runs into more than 100 or much more, I believe. So, we have all this diversity. And next slide, please. And this is the same reflection, but what has happened as a result of growth is the rich class, the upper middle class have benefited a lot, and the poor have been left where they were more or less. Slight improvement, but not much. Proportionally, this group has reaped a lot more advantage. And what has happened is a lot of money came to the country in the name of reform, but it all went and fattened one section of the community, not the other. It's like the human body with a huge head and a small torso. And therefore, the developed section of society moves very fast. They travel in planes, their communications are via cell phones and internet and stuff like that, which are very fast. But at the village level, things move slow, and there are reasons for this. Now, the media and the intelligentsia dissociate the traditional, cultural, and the moral values. They say this has nothing to do with cultural moral values. The village people are lazy, they are backward, they are uneducated, that's all the problem. Their norms are different, our norms are different, and so it is a pity they are not moving forward. This same argument, by the way, is being used in America also. That's not correct, and I will come to that. But let me stay with India for a minute. Next slide, please. This is a cartoon that appeared in the British magazine Economist, which is a weekly, which is like the Time magazine, except that instead of politics, the Economist deals with economics, global economics. So this is the rural India and lower middle class India. This is the upper class India. Instead of bullocks, you are trying to pull a bullock cart with a car, luxury car. That is a sort of easy way of remembering the gap that divides those of us who are in this hall, lucky to be in this hall, and those who can never get into this hall. Next slide, please. This is a bit of dry statistics, but nevertheless it's a compelling one. The countries shown here from India all the way to here, you have Ethiopia here, in between you have China and so on. They are shown in two colors. One color, this dark purple, is middle income country. The GDP is such and the population is such that these countries are not poor, low income, but middle income. These are low income. And what you see here is the number of percentage of the world's poor. So if you take, say, India and China, China has more population than India, 1.6 billion compared to 1.2. But if you take all the poor people in the world, only 15% live in China. But we have more than 1/3 of the world's poor. That is, 1 in 3 poor person in the world lives in India. And India has more poor people than Africa. Nobody would believe it, but that's the kind of statistics that is staring us. At this point, I would like to turn to America, the global icon of growth, wealth, prosperity, development, etc. Not many people are aware what has happened to America after 1970 and 1980. For 100 years, everybody went from Europe to America. They went from Ireland when there was a potato famine in Ireland, and they all struck it out well in America. I don't know how many of you have heard of a movie star called Danny Kaye. He used to be a comedian. And his father came from Poland. And Danny Kaye was a small kid. He went with his father. And after a while, he came back. He became a movie star and all that. And he went to Poland, to his native village. Everybody gathered around him. And they said, "Is it true that in America all the streets are paved with gold?" He said, "No, that's not true. In fact, many streets, that is what I believe his father said, not him. Sorry. His father, after going to America, earned some money, and then he wanted to see his relatives, he came back. This was late 1800s. Is it true all the streets are paved with gold? No, that's not true. In fact, many streets are not even paved. In fact, my job is to pave the cities." That's what he said. So through hard work, people came up. And that was so. And when Henry Ford started car manufacturing, it was not that Henry Ford built the first car. Cars were in existence, and Henry Ford himself had a garage where he used to make cars. And one fine day he said, "What nonsense. Why don't I mass produce?" Nobody had done mass production before that. It was Henry Ford who invented mass production. And not only that, once he did, he needed a lot of people. He didn't have people. People flocked from Europe, from Germany, from Poland, and so on, Sweden and so on, Italy and so on. He didn't care as long as they could use a spanner and a screwdriver. And he mass-produced cars. And he began to pay his laborers high wage. And the reason for that was simple. He said, "I make these cars so that they are bought. And who is going to buy them? It's only the middle class who is going to buy them. So I'll give them high wages so that they buy my car." So that was where America made a change in policy. Instead of paying pittance wages, he said, "I'll pay decent wages." There was only one obsession which Ford had. He said about color, "I don't care what color you paint my car as long as it's black." He didn't want any color other than black. Many people said, "You have this color." He said, "I don't care what color you paint as long as it's black." And then another company said, "Oh, people like other colors." So they tried with red, yellow and blue and so on. And overnight, competition began to win. And that company was General Motors, Chevrolet. So you see, even a simple thing like color, Henry Ford made a mistake, although he was a pioneer in mass production. Now I'm telling you all this to take you on to the next slide, which shows that till the 60s, there was a growth ladder in America. You could come here as a very poor person with no skills, learn skills, even if you didn't know the language, slowly go up to various levels. Some of the best went all the way here, others could come somewhere here. A very large number of people ended up here, which means they had a small home when they became old. They had retirement funds and they lived comfortably. That's the most important point. As long as manufacture was the backbone of the economy, American economy, things went very well for America. This was so in the 1950s and 1960s. Starting from the mid-70s, things started changing rapidly and very dramatically. And there were two factors responsible for this, and I would request you to pay careful attention to this. First was, there was a new economic policy. Till that time, America was a capitalist country, there was no question. But capitalism functioned under certain rules and guidances. The market was tightly controlled and regulated. But in 70s and 80s, they said the market must be completely liberated. And this philosophy, and second thing was, around the same time, there were three things that happened on the technology front. While the government of the United States and the United Kingdom were taking this decision, major policy decision, there were three things that happened on the economic front, scientific front, technological front. First was the appearance of the PC. The first PC came from Apple. Very soon after that, IBM PC came, almost back to back. And when the PC came around the same time, satellite communication came and the fiber optic communication came. In other words, the internet was born along with the PC. And that happened around the same time when the market was deregulated. And the net result was that as a result of this combination, the market became global overnight. Next slide, please. These two people, Margaret Thatcher in England, Ronald Reagan in America, were sort of the propounders of the new economic policy, and both declared that the business of government was to get out of business so that a prosperous, free, diverse and propertied society must be created. This worked very well for a time. But after a while, there were problems. And what really went was, when the reforms were made, the market went wild with joy. It's like, having speed regulations. In America, they have speed limits. In some places, you can drive not more than 50 miles per hour, in other places, 80 miles per hour. But if you go to Germany on the autobahns, there are no speed limits. You can drive as fast as you want, but you take responsibility for your actions. If you have an accident, you pay for it. If you die, your property or something will pay for it, and especially when you injure others. But there are no speed limits. So when the regulations were removed in America and in England, the market went wild with joy and they became innovative. All sorts of new financial methods of making money were invented. And this freedom was so intoxicating that very soon people found that cheating was the easiest way of making money. Why do all these things? Why do insurance? Just cheat in the name of insurance or banking. You make a lot more money and a lot faster. And when large number of people begin to cheat in a massive way, then it is asking for trouble. If one person here and there does, that problems are localized. And that problem really happened in America in a massive way. In the year 2000, they had a huge housing bubble, and in the year 2008, they had the Wall Street crash. And as a result of that, what happened was, next slide please, the social structure which was like this became like this. Thanks to globalization, a lot of the manufacturing jobs went away to China and the software jobs came to India. So between India and China, they took away all the middle teeth. Imagine taking away all the front teeth and just leaving the back teeth. How can it chew? But that's the kind of fate America made for itself. In short, today, America, there are a few people, they are filthy rich. There are lots of people who are very, very poor. If you follow the American media very carefully, which I do, it's astonishing to see how many people live on the streets. It's astonishing to see the level of poverty there. And you couldn't believe that such things happen. I mean, they are not as desperately poor as the people here, but in relation to their society, the affordability of things and so on, it is really very difficult. For example, if a woman lives in Mississippi in a small hut in a faraway place, if she has to buy something, she has to go a long distance. She can't do that. In many Indian villages, I'm talking of Native Americans, they walk walk 30 miles to go to a grocery store and buy some bread. That's the kind of thing that has happened, all because of wrong policies. Now, the long and short of it is that the so-called reforms of Reagan and Mrs. Thatcher were like removing the brakes of a car and allowing the motorist to drive as he pleased. As I told you, the market went wild with joy, but then crashes occurred. I must here hasten to mention that crash did not occur in India. It occurred only in America and a few other countries. It did not occur in many other countries like Canada. What was the reason? The reason is we were far more careful with our economic reforms than America was. America became reckless. They literally stopped paying attention to manufacture and say, let us multiply money by gambling. That doesn't work. When an individual gambles and loses, it's the individual loses. But when the country gambles and loses, the country loses. That's the fundamental difference. So, I won't blame the market for all the problems in India, as in America. But nevertheless, the reforms as such that were introduced in 1990 do have a side effect. You know, sometimes when we take medicines, they produce side effects. The medicine is supposed to do good for us, but there are also side effects. Similarly, market reform did lead to GDP growth, but it had many side effects, and that's what I was talking about. And now the question is, will this side effect be so serious as to harm us or not? So let me get back to America and say America's side effect was the middle class was wiped out, in the sense that they really became poor. And the few middle class that were left were in a very bad state. At one time, when Steve Jobs was alive, President Obama called him and had a talk with him. And President Obama told Steve Jobs, Steve, most of the manufacturing jobs have fled America. Can you do something to get them back? And Steve Jobs' reply was, forget it, Mr. President, they are gone forever. So this is a structural change, that's the buzzword. And they are struggling to deal with the structural change. Manufacturing has now come back to America, and it is doing very well, but with the difference. And that difference is, manufacturing has now become automated, and it's computers that manufacture, not the human beings, not the machines. Where a factory used to employ 500, they now employ about 15 people, and these are the people who know how to control the computers. Gone are the people who used to operate the milling machines, the lathes, and so on. Everything is done by machines. So, out of 500 people, once the factory starts going into the automation mode, something like 450 people are asked to go home, only 15 to 20 people are kept. This is how job